You don't have to become a mendicant and have a begging bowl and wander in a robe from town to town. If you want to have nice things, you can have nice things. Don't have more of them than you need.
Hi, welcome to Resonate, Conversations and Life Lessons from Rancho La Puerta. I'm your host, Barry, and today you are joining me at one of my favorite spots at the ranch. This is our koi pond. I don't know if you can, how well you can see it. There's just something tranquil about running water to me, and I can get lost watching these fish swim round and round. There's no sense of urgency, no place they gotta be. They're just content being fish. I think one of the greatest gifts that we give our guests at the ranch is the opportunity to let go of busy. Our lives are so full of distractions. We have social media, text messages, phone calls, meetings, traffic, chores. There's so many things that take us away from the present moment and away from who we are. If we can start to let go of some of those distractions, we can reconnect with ourselves, and that's what the ranch is all about. And today's guest on our podcast is all about less distractions and more love. Andrew Mellen is a speaker, an author, and a professional organizer. He's had a 27-year career where he's helped 500,000 people to find more balance in their life. His book, Unstuff Your Life, is a Wall Street Journal bestseller. I can't wait to hear some tips on how to get more organized with my life, get rid of some clutter, and have more time to spend on the things that I love and bring me joy. Hey, Andrew, it's nice to see you. Thanks for taking your time to talk to me today.
Thanks, Barry. Of course. Happy to be here.
In my intro, I introduced you as one of the things as a professional organizer. And when I was in college, I didn't see that in the curriculum. So how does one become a professional organizer, and also why? Because honestly, the word organize has a negative connotation to a lot of people.
I worked in the theater for 20 years. That was my first career. I was running a theater in Seattle, Washington. And when I got laid off from that theater, I headed back east to co-produce an award ceremony at the Kennedy Center. One of our awardees was a Nobel Peace Prize winner. I went to his office to get some photographs, and while I was going through his photographs, they were a mess. They'd been mislabeled, misfiled, things had been lent out, never returned. And in the process of spending a couple of hours in his office, I found what I needed. And as a result, his wife invited me into their apartment and said, "So who are you? What's your story?" And I told her I was running a theater in Seattle. Now I'm producing this award ceremony. I'll be back up in New York when this gig is over. And she said, "Well, would you like to come and organize our photographs for us?" I said, "That would be a tremendous honor. I would love to do that for you." I mean, I didn't have a job. I just knew that I was moving back to New York. So here I would be able to come back to the city with a job. This is a man that I've revered for years. And I thought this would be a tremendous opportunity. Sure, I'd love to. So we made a date for me to go to. Meanwhile, I was looking for theater work. This was not on my radar, like, oh, I'm going to transition into a professional organizer. It was a gig, and that was as far as I was thinking. And I hadn't read anything about organizing or, it just wasn't even on my radar. So the day before I was supposed to go to work, their assistant called up, said something unexpected has happened. We need to reschedule for a month later. So we made a date for a month later. A month later, phone rings, reschedule for a month later. Month later, phone rings, reschedule. Then they call me up and say, "When we're ready to proceed, we'll get back in touch with you." So I never actually go to work for them. But in those 4 months, I tell every person I meet, I've got this amazing gig. I'm going to create a comprehensive photographic archive for a Nobel Peace Prize winner. That led to a friend of mine referring me to her accountant who needed a filing system built. So I built that for her. She started referring clients to me. So people would show up literally with a duffel bag full of receipts saying, "I haven't filed my taxes in 5 years. There's letters in here from the IRS. I'm freaked out. I don't want to go to jail. Can you make sense out of this before something bad happens to me?" So I'd organize their receipts. I'd put it in QuickBooks, give it to the accountant. The accountant would file their taxes. And they would come back to me and say, "You're amazing. You saved my life. You're a genius." And they would tell all their friends, "You'll never believe it. I gave this guy a pile of garbage. He turned it into my tax returns. He's amazing." They would say, "Who is this guy? I need somebody just like that." And so one by one, these gigs kept coming and coming and coming. And while I was still looking for other work, I was like, well, I mean, it's landing right in my lap. It would be silly to say no to this. And it's easy for me. I mean, it's like the game of concentration, right? You know, like
Yeah.
here's a 10 of spades, here's a 10 of spades, here's the queen of clubs, here's the queen of clubs. Where were they again? It's matching up receipts. It was very easy for me. And they're not my receipts, so I don't have any baggage attached to it. It's just
Right,
like, oh,
yeah.
okay, so this is, you know, office supplies, office supplies, office supplies, restaurants, 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 groceries, groceries, groceries. It's very easy. And that was the very beginning of this practice. And that was, you know, 27 years ago.
Yeah. Well, you must be slightly interested in doing it too. Kind of like you must like puzzles and things like that.
I love puzzles. And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, if you think about it, directing and producing plays they're three-dimensional puzzles. Like, where are the actors going? What are the designers doing? What are the words, the playwright? What, you know, piecing all of that together to tell a cohesive and compelling story. It's a different puzzle, but it's also a puzzle.
You know, the acting analogy kind of loses me. I look like a professional actor, but I'm not. So I have heard you say before that stuff robs us of time and ultimately our lives. And I don't know if I heard it. I've been watching you all over the place, but you said the average person spends a year of their life looking for stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that depends on how long you live, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Deborah might have
Right.
spent a year and a half, right?
Yes,
So,
exactly.
I mean, she's been around so long that, I mean, she might have been,
Right.
I mean, but she's also pretty organized, right? But
Yeah.
the average person, the statistic is, and I'm guessing that they consider probably life expectancy in the late 70s or the
Yeah.
early 80s, right? The average person will waste 1 year of their life looking for lost or misplaced items. And the way that I chunk that up for people so that they understand it, it's nobody's going to spend a year of their life looking for their mobile phone or their car keys. After a day or two, you'll get new keys, you'll buy a new phone.
Right.
It happens in 5, 10, and 15-minute increments, which is so easy to discount and say,
Right,
I'm
yeah.
going to make up that lost time. But you can't. Once the time has been spent, you're never going to
Right.
get that time back.
I mean, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
The other thing that I find interesting is your organization and declutter your life is not just about stuff. It's like I love the thing you say is unpack the stuff behind the stuff. So
Yeah.
what's behind all this stuff that we have?
Well, for each of us, it's different. Just to be super clear for listeners, right? There's organizing and there's decluttering. They're related, but the letting go of things is a part of organizing. But organizing is really using the organizational triangle, which is something that I made up. One home for everything, like with like, something in, something out. And so we get organized by assigning everything one home and only one home and putting all of its siblings together. That will get you organized. Once you're
Right.
organized, then you might still need to declutter. You might have, when you pull all of your sweaters together, you might discover, oh, I have 47 black turtleneck sweaters. I didn't realize that because they were in all the different drawers and on different shelves. And I just thought I had some black turtleneck sweaters. Now I can see I actually have 47 of them. I don't need 47 of them. I could
Right.
live with 9 of them or 4 of them or whatever the number is that makes
Right.
sense for each individual person.
Right.
But so why each of us has a particular relationship with stuff is as personal and unique as each of us are, as each of our psychology and our spiritual life and our emotions are. So you might be attracted to certain kinds of things that for me have no interest or no value, that I wouldn't get snagged on, you know, keeping them or making decisions about should they stay or should they go, and vice versa, right? Like maybe I have a collection of Hummels. I don't, but maybe I had a collection of Hummels and you're
Right.
like, Hummels, I don't get what they're about, right? But you have a lot of shirts and I'm like, well, I have 12 shirts and they're all plaids and I could swap any one of them and I, you know, I'll have clothes on and it doesn't really matter to me. So each of us is going to have our own relationship with the stuff. The stuff behind the stuff is all the story that's keeping it sticky, right? Because in and of itself, this is a bell. This is a phone. These are just devices. But the fact that I might be able to tell you where I got the mobile phone, or how much I paid for the phone, or all of the things that I
Right.
do with the phone. That's me and my story. The phone in and of itself, if I leave and you came across this and you don't know that it's my phone, it's just a device. It either has use or it doesn't have use. So the story is the sticky part. And that's what I spend so much time working with folks to do, is recognize where the object stops and the story begins. And then you get to decide, is it a story that resonates with you now that you're paying attention to it? Is it a useful story? I have a friend and a client. She has a stereo in her living room that she got from a boyfriend who was mean to her. Was the nicest thing he ever gave to her, and he was mean to her. So every time she goes to play a CD, her first thought is, that asshole, excuse me, that jerk gave me that stereo. The second thought is, I love this music, right? So why would she hold on to something that the first time she encounters it, every time she encounters it, brings up these negative, disappointing, frustrating, guilty, shamey feelings, when she could easily just replace that and have a clean experience with something that makes music for her, right?
Stories sounds like an emotional thing. And the other thing I was going to ask you is it cultural a little bit? Because I read somewhere that the United States stores more things by far than any other country in the world. I mean, we have storage places. There must be like 50 in San Diego where people are paying $100 a month to store things that they haven't seen in 5 years.
Exactly.
What is that about?
Well, that's about deferred decisions. So that is really the definition of clutter. Clutter is deferred decisions. So it was easier at some point for somebody to pack stuff up, drive it to U-Storem or, Easy Storage or whatever, park it there, put a lock on it, and walk away and say, and they meant it, I'll get back to that later. And the only time they think about it is once a month when it hits their credit card. Then they're like, oh God, I got to get over there and deal with that. And then something else comes up, and 29 days later, they're like, oh, great. This month, I'm really going to get over there and deal with it. And as you said, right? I mean, the clock keeps ticking and ticking. And clearly they're able to live without those things because they are living without them. The only time I believe that offsite storage is a useful tool is if you're actually renovating your home and you have to move things out for a limited period of time, or if you are moving your house, like you're literally relocating, and you have a window of time between when you have to leave your old place and you can move into your new place. But otherwise, why would you pay good money to park things that you are no longer using just in case?
Maybe it's a twist on that third rule that you have, is one thing in, one thing out. One thing out means I'll take this to the storage because I got something new and I might use that again. It's just interesting how we get so attached to things. And you talk about how you think, feel, and react to things. Right. And then you have to change those three things, because you can get rid of the clutter, you can get rid of stuff, but if you don't change those three things, you're going to be right back where you started.
It'll be a different pair of shoes, it'll be a different sweater, it'll be a different coffee mug. Right. But until you change how you think, how you feel, and how you actually interact with these things, you haven't changed. And so those stories are still going to make your choices. It's the same, whether it's trying to lose weight, stop drinking, go to the gym. The subconscious is making all of our choices if we're not mindfully, consciously making our choices and being deliberate in our behavior. If we're not doing it, then the lizard brain back here is making all of our choices for us.
So, like everything in life, it's an awareness that you're doing it. I mean that's the first step to change. So when you go in and someone asks you to help them declutter, where do you start? Do you start with the actual things? Do you start with the stories? Do you start with that person? What do you do?
So typically when I show up to work with a private client, we'll talk for 5 or 10 minutes, typically while we're doing a tour of the home or the office. I'll say,
Right.
show me around. Let's get a sense of what you're dealing with, what's here. And so it disarms them. I mean, I'm being completely transparent. It's not like I'm trying to trick them, but because we're walking and talking, chances are they'll be a little disarmed and a little more vulnerable and share a little more freely because they're involved in showing me around. So I'll actually get more of the real story instead of the story that they'd like to present. If something seems sticky, or they'll start to tell me, oh, this was my great grandmother's bell. Let me, that's very important to me. Great.
Right.
Well, tell me the story of the bell. Where'd the bell come from? And as we start to talk, I start to recognize patterns. And what often happens with my private clients is what they invited me in for is seldom where we actually go. So they'll say, I really need some help with my closets. And we'll go look at the closets, and the closets are a mess. But then when we walk into their home office, you can see that, oh, this is really where everything starts and finishes for them. That their relationship in this room with the stuff is the closet will be easy. Once we can address this is where things are really impacted and compacted. We have to crack something open in this space, because when that energetically starts to move, the ripple effects throughout the entire home and really through their entire life will start to open up things for them. It's the most magical, intuitive part of all of the work that I do, because most of it is very concrete and very replicable and methodical. And this is the one part that's like, interesting that this is what you think the problem is.
Yeah.
I'm thinking we really should spend a little bit of time over here first.
My name is Dick Anderson. My wife and I have been here for over 15 times. And so it's been over 10 years that we've been here as guests. Now, my wife is not here. I'm here alone. The reason being is that she has Alzheimer's, is in the final stages of this terminal disease. And so the transitions that have occurred with me personally have been related to emotional, spiritual, and also physical. And so these changes have helped me move through the various transitions of my wife's disease. And one of the areas that has really, really helped me in the last 4 years is recently I came back to the ranch. And I found it to be a blessing, because there is so much support for myself in terms of the transitions that I'm making with my wife, and the support that was here in terms of genuine people wanting to know more about what was going on in my transition. That was immensely helpful to me.
I hope you're enjoying today's podcast as much as I am. To learn more about our wonderful presenters and exciting weeks coming up at the ranch, go to rancholaporta.com and check out our events calendar. Make sure to mention the podcast when making your reservation to take advantage of a special offer. Some restrictions may apply. You sound a little bit like a therapist, right? I mean, there must be a little bit of that involved, right?
Yeah.
Because that TV show Hoarders has gotten so popular, but hoarding is just a form of addiction, right?
Hoarding, according to the DSM-5, is
The DSM-5, you are a therapist.
Yeah. It's actually it's tied to depression most often. I have so many of my students will say to me, I know that you say you're not a therapist. You are better than most therapists that I've ever talked to. And I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
The reality is, when we think about hoarding disorder, typically there's depression, sometimes there's anxiety, so it might be bipolar or manic depression might be present. Obsessive compulsive disorder might also be there. And while it is similar to an addiction in that sense, that there is something compelling them, that the desire to stop is often not enough, that some additional intervention is required to break the pattern of behavior. I have worked with people with hoarding disorder as private clients, and when they are interested and willing to do the work, we can make progress, right? I mean, they have to consciously struggle against, again, a certain amount of pathology that is like, well, wait, what about that? What about that? Oh, no, not that, not that. And so I do spend a fair amount of time in those situations having to metaphorically talk them off the ledge of like, we've already discussed this. It's just a magazine. I understand it's a magazine with, Princess Di on the cover, but you're not related to her, and it's not, you could get it again if you really needed it. And you've already told me that it's more important that we actually create some space in this room. So is that still true? And if they say, yes, it is, then it's like, well, then my feeling is you could probably let this go. Do you think you could let it go? And, I have to coach them through that until they're like, yes, I agree. Let's just put it in the recycle bin and not look back.
I wonder what the actual marker is that crosses you from just being obsessive to being a hoarder. Is like, since I only have 30 turtleneck sweaters, I don't think that I would be a hoarder, right? If I had 32, maybe. I mean, it's hard to define. It's right.
I would say that when the amount of things that you have start to significantly negatively impact your ability to function on a daily basis in your environment, you've crossed the magical line. So if you have what they often refer to as like goat paths, where like the Collier brothers, where there's literally so much stuff stacked up in the rooms where there's only a path that you can walk through. When your ability to function on a daily basis in your home is chronically negatively impacted, I would say that you are in the hoarding tendencies zone.
We're talking a lot about physical things, but like in today's world, I can imagine there's a lot of people that have so many subscriptions to all these different channels, all these things that they're paying out money for every month that they're not watching, they're not paying attention to. That's kind of in the same area, isn't it?
Totally, it's just digital clutter, of course, yeah. I mean,
digital clutter and
apps that you download on your phone. I mean, many times I'll walk into a client's office and I'll look in their downloads folder, and because they were impatient or not paying attention, they've downloaded the same file 10 or 15 times. They just keep pushing the button because it's not happening fast enough. And then you look in the folder, and when you sort them, because if you sort them chronologically, you might not see them. But if you sort them by name, suddenly it's like, oh, there are 12 copies of the same PDF. We don't need 11 of them. We can throw those away.
Right.
Same thing with photographs. Often, and certainly people will download apps and do the same thing, right? I'm gonna review that app later, but right now I just want to download it. And then they don't schedule time with themselves to actually play with the app and then decide, is this a useful app or is it just sitting on my phone? Throw it away.
Right. Yeah.
You can download it again.
And I'm sure there's something super rewarding that people feel when they declutter. Like, if I clean out my garage or my closet, like I feel really good for some, even though I don't necessarily know why, but I do always feel really good. Do you think less is more?
I make it clear to folks, I'm not a minimalist. I'm an essentialist. I have things. I mean, there's art on the wall behind me. I have books on bookshelves. I find that minimalism is another form of dogma for many people. So it's more about rules, and it again has the focus on the stuff rather than on my values and how I want to live my life. So I have things. I have art on the walls. I have furniture. I'm not busy keeping score of I'm only allowed to have 5 pairs of shoes. If I have a 6 pair of shoes and there's room for them in my closet and I like them and I wear them, who cares? I'd much rather, where am I wearing the shoes to? What am I going dancing in the shoes? Am I going to a party in the shoes? That's more important to me than I have to always be monitoring how many things I own. I don't want to spend my precious non-renewable resource of this precious life that I have keeping score of the amount of things that I own.
Right. I think that's a super good point. Do you think there's something spiritual about decluttering? Because it kind of seems like it makes more space in your life to focus on what's really important and what's on the inside of you. Like one of my favorite gurus was Wayne Dyer. And I remember when he turned 65, he sold everything he owned. He never even wore shoes again because he wanted to focus on his spiritual path.
Well, I certainly think that, I mean, back to the idea of less being more. I think that it's a thing for each of us to figure out.
Right.
Where does less feel like deprivation, like you're doing something, you're taking something away from yourself, and where does that middle way feel appropriate to you? Like, I have enough of everything that serves me. I don't have anything that doesn't. I can find what I'm looking for when I need it, but I'm not visually distracted by things that are interfering with my ability to focus and concentrate. So wherever that line is for each of us, I invite everybody to go find that place. And so I certainly, for myself, the ability to sit still, be quiet, whether that's in formal seated meditation or just quiet reflection, I would much rather spend my time there again than, moving sweaters from room to room or trying to find room for another USB cable in my closet. I think that that's the opportunity for folks to consider what's important to you. How do you make choices aligned with your values and not buying into external noise, whether that's the opinions of other people saying, oh, how could you let that go? Another story, right? I had a house in Pennsylvania that was my summer home. I mean, although I went to it year round. I mean, when I lived in Manhattan, and I wrote my first book on Stuff Your Life there, and I spent a lot of time renovating that home. And when Unstuff Your Life was coming out, I had an epiphany when I was standing in the shower in my apartment in Manhattan. I was like, I think I'm going to sell the house because what I really want to do is a form of secular ministry. I want to travel around and teach and speak and coach people on letting things go that don't serve them. So sitting on a lake in Pennsylvania was great for 8 years. It no longer served me. And immediately, as soon as I started to tell my friends this, their response was, it's a beautiful house. It's your dream house. How could you let it go? I could never do that. It's like, well, I understand you could never do that. I've just listed it with a realtor. I can do it. And so it's that sense of, I think each of us we are vulnerable to external pressures and societal messaging around what a good life looks like and what nice things look like and what they mean about our status in society, what they mean about comfort and luxury and quality of life. And to your point about Wayne Dyer, right? I mean, we get to decide. You don't have to become a mendicant and have a begging bowl and wander in a robe from town to town. You could if it resonates with you, but if you want to have nice things, you can have nice things. Don't have more of them than you need.
I want to touch really quickly on a book that I didn't mention earlier, that you wrote a book calling the BS on busy.
Yes.
And BS being my initials, but no, I'm sure that's not what you meant. But so tell me how being overly busy, relates to all this that we're talking about.
It's a kind of time clutter is the simplest way to think about it. And in the book, I talk about the 8 deadly time thieves: overcommitting, poor planning, multitasking, emails, meetings, social media, interruptions, and procrastination. These are the most pernicious time thieves in the work that I've been doing for the last, 10 or 15 years, particularly with my corporate clients and working with businesses and business owners. I've recognized similar patterns around time that I recognized around stuff when I first started doing, professional organizing work. And so helping people to really recognize, again, time is a non-renewable resource. You can tell yourself you're going to make up the time later, but you're not. Clock resets itself every night at midnight. You either spend it or you lose it, but you can't bank it. You can bank money, but you can't bank time. So how are you going to spend it? And how are you going to, even better than spending it, how are you going to invest it in your life?
Right. I think that's awesome advice. I feel like sometimes in our modern society that we make ourselves so busy with so many things that we forget to spend time with ourselves, or we forget what's really important to us because we're distracted. There are really a ton of distractions to who we are and what we want to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's no end to the noise that's out here. And again, you don't have to become a Rinzai Zen monk to sit still long enough to be able to just quiet down some of the noise and get clear on, how do I want to live? What's important to me? Is it relationships? Is it experiences? Where do I want to put my attention? And I tell people often, right? Like, busy in the 21st century is like the parents on Charlie Brown, right? It's just like wah, 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 wah.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's busy. You don't get bonus points, and no, it's not a badge of honor or even a badge of dishonor to say, oh, I would love to, but I'm so busy. Warren Buffett says busy is the new stupid. Again, we've created a system in which it sounds legitimate until you recognize that everybody has demands on their time, and there's probably always more to do than there are hours to do it in if you don't know what's important to you, right? If you're just in that place where urgent is making your choices and you're basically like a ball in a pinball machine getting battered around by life, trying to avoid the bumpers and not time out. It's a miserable way to live life.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think that people, like, I have to realize sometimes when I think I'm too busy is that I'm the one who's made the choices of why I'm busy. So like what you said about what is really important to you and what are your values, then you can find time for what's really important to you.
You can.
And hopefully you will. Yeah. So this is great stuff. So tell us, you're going to be at the ranch coming up to doing a lecture series for a week, right?
Yeah, I'm coming back to the ranch. I think this is either my 8th or 9th year coming back. It's my home away from home. I'm gonna get a little teary thinking about it. I love being there, and I'll be there for a week. And typically when I'm there, I teach 4 different 45-minute classes. So each one of them stands on its own merit, and also 4 of them together is 4 times the joy, 4 times the decluttering and organizing and time management. And each one has a different theme. One of them is specifically about time management, and the other 3 are all about shifting your relationship with stuff.
Well, we appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you. And thank you so much for spending time with us today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Barry.
See you soon. Have you ever cleaned out your garage or maybe even your closet and felt amazing afterwards? I'm even geekier than that. I get a rush from making my bed every morning. Mostly because when I come home at night and my bed is made and everything is where it's supposed to be, I can feel my stress level just start to drop. In today's podcast, Andrew mentioned that everyone's relationship to things and how organized they are is very personal, and there's no right or wrong. Like everything, he suggests that you explore your values and just make sure that the things around you are congruent with your values and how you live your life. Also, he mentioned that we attach stories to things, and sometimes these stories are not applicable anymore. Maybe they're like 5 to 10 years old. Go back and look at those. Maybe they're not serving you anymore. Give yourself permission to let go of the story and maybe let go of the thing as well. One of the examples that he used today is a guy who had 47 black turtleneck sweaters. That one kind of hits home for me, because after that, he said that I looked in my closet and I counted over 60 t-shirts. And you know what? I don't even wear t-shirts anymore. Some of them I got at a concert, someone gave me as a gift, and I feel sentimental, I feel attached to them. But today I'm giving myself permission to get rid of maybe 75% of them. Start small. I hope that today's podcast helped you to look at your life and see what are the things that are adding to my life and what are the things that are taking away from my life. And for me, taking away means taking my time away, a precious commodity we can never get back. I hope today's podcast allowed you to look at your life, maybe explore what are the things that are adding to your life and what are the things that are taking away from your life. For me, taking away is taking time that I could spend doing something I really want to do. Thanks for listening in today. Till next time, wishing you health and daily joy.